Friends, do you know that over 2,000 years ago, the Romans built water highways that stretched for miles, sometimes even across mountains, just to bring fresh water into their cities? Imagine living in a world where a single drop of water could mean the difference between life and death. How did they do it? How did the Romans, without modern machines, manage to supply millions with clean water every single day? Today, we're diving into one of history's greatest engineering mysteries, the Roman aqueducts. Let's set the scene. It's the height of the Roman Empire, around the 1st century AD. Rome is the beating heart of a civilization that stretches from the windswept hills of Britain to the sun-baked deserts of Egypt. The city itself is bursting at the seams. Over 1 million people call it home. That's more than most cities in Europe at the time, and even more than some cities today. But here's the thing, Rome isn't built on a river. The Tiber, the city's main water source, is muddy, slow, and often polluted. The city's wells and springs can't keep up with the growing demand. People need water for drinking, cooking, bathing, and even for the famous Roman baths. Without a steady supply, the city would grind to a halt. So, what did the Romans do? They looked to the hills. They searched for clean, fresh springs, sometimes dozens of miles away. And then, they did something that would change the world forever. They built aqueducts, massive stone channels that carried water across valleys, through tunnels, and over bridges, all the way into the heart of Rome. By the end of the empire, Rome alone had 11 major aqueducts, stretching over 300 miles in total. Some of these structures still stand today, silent witnesses to a time when water was power and engineering was the key to survival. But the story of Roman aqueducts isn't just about stone and water. It's about people, engineers, laborers, citizens, and even emperors who dared to dream big and work together to solve one of the greatest challenges of their time. But it wasn't easy. The Romans faced challenge after challenge. The land between the springs and the city was anything but flat. There were hills, valleys, forests, and even swamps. Every mile brought new problems. How do you keep water flowing over such a long distance? How do you make sure it doesn't get dirty or lost along the way? And what happens if something goes wrong? The stakes were high. If the aqueducts failed, the city would suffer. Disease could spread. The famous Roman baths would close. The people, rich and poor alike, would be left thirsty and desperate. The pressure was on the engineers to get it right. And then, there was the ever-present threat of sabotage. Enemies of Rome knew that cutting off the water supply could bring the city to its knees. Guards were posted along the aqueducts. Repairs had to be made quickly, sometimes in the dead of night. But the Romans were nothing if not determined. They pushed forward, using every tool and trick they had. They measured the land with simple tools, just a stick, a string, and a keen eye. They dug tunnels through solid rock, sometimes for miles. They built bridges that soared above the countryside, carrying water high above the ground. And through it all, they never lost sight of their goal, to bring life-giving water to the people of Rome. Let's walk through how a Roman aqueduct was actually built, step by step. The search for water. Roman engineers, called aquarii, would travel for days, sometimes weeks, looking for the purest springs. They'd taste the water, test it for clarity, and even check if it was cold enough. Only the best would do for Rome. Surveying the land, this was the most critical part. The engineers had to make sure the water would flow by gravity alone, from the spring to the city. That meant the channel had to slope ever so gently, usually just a few inches per mile. Too steep, and the water would rush too fast, eroding the channel. Too flat, and it would stop altogether. They used a tool called exorbitant, a kind of giant level, to make sure the slope was perfect. If the water didn't flow just right, the whole project could fail. Construction begins at sunrise. The work would begin. Hundreds of laborers, slaves, soldiers, and skilled craftsmen would dig trenches, lay stones, and build arches. The sound of hammers and chisels echoed across the countryside. Every stone had to be placed just right. Every joint had to be sealed with a special waterproof mortar called opus signatum. When the aqueduct reached a valley, the Romans built bridges, sometimes hundreds of feet long and dozens of feet high. The most famous of these is the Pont du Gard in France, a three-tiered masterpiece that still stands today. That if they hit a hill, they didn't go over it, they went through it. Roman miners would dig tunnels, sometimes for miles, using nothing but hand tools and oil lamps. The air would be thick with dust, and the work was dangerous. But the Romans pressed on. The journey of water, picture a single drop, starting its journey at a mountain spring miles from Rome. It trickles into a stone channel, cool and clear. The channel is covered to keep out dirt and animals. As the drop moves along, it joins millions of others, forming a steady stream. Every so often, the water passes through a settling tank, a kind of ancient filter. Here, the heavier dirt and sand sink to the bottom, while the clean water flows on. The Romans were obsessed with keeping their water pure. They even lined the channels with a special waterproof plaster to stop leaks and keep out roots. Water nears the city. It enters a huge holding tank called a castellum. From here, it's divided into smaller pipes, each leading to a different part of the city. Some pipes go to public fountains, where anyone can fill a jug or take a drink. Others go to the baths, the heart of Roman social life. And a lucky few lead straight to the homes of the rich. But the journey isn't always smooth. Sometimes, the water has to cross a deep valley. Here, the Romans build towering arches, like the famous Aqueducts. These bridges are marvels of engineering, strong enough to last for centuries, yet graceful, enough to blend into the landscape. Other times, the water must pass through a hill. The Romans dig tunnels, sometimes for miles, using nothing but hand tools. The work is slow and dangerous. Sometimes, the tunnels collapse, trapping workers inside. But the Romans press on, driven by the promise of fresh water. And then, there are the siphons. When the land dips too low for a bridge, the Romans use a clever trick. They build a closed pipe, usually made of lead or stone, that dips down into the valley and then rises up the other side. The water, pushed by gravity, flows down and then up like a giant drinking straw. It's risky. If the pipe leaks, the whole system fails. But when it works, it's a thing of beauty. Now, let's step into the sandals of the people who lived and worked with these aqueducts. Imagine you're a Roman laborer, waking up before dawn. The air is cool, but you know the day will be long and hot. You grab your tools and join a line of workers heading out to the construction site. Some are slaves, forced to work by the threat of punishment. Others are free men, hoping to earn enough to feed their families. The work is backbreaking. You dig, you haul stones, you mix mortar until your hands are raw. Sometimes, you're deep underground, chipping away at rock by the flicker of a torch. The air is thick, and every breath feels heavy. But you keep going, because you know this. Water isn't just for the rich. It's for everyone. Your family, your neighbors, your city. And then, there are the engineers. These men are respected, even feared. They carry strange tools and speak in terms most people don't understand. But when they walk the line, everyone pays attention. If they say the slope is wrong, you tear it down and start again. No one wants to be the reason the water stops flowing. For the people of Rome, the arrival of aqueduct water is a miracle. Suddenly, public fountains spring to life. The baths fill with clean, cool water. Bakers can make better bread. The city feels alive in a way it never has before. Children splash in the fountains. Women gather to fill their jugs and share the latest gossip. Even the poorest citizens have access to something that, in other cities, is a luxury. But there's another side to this story. Not everyone benefits equally. The wealthy have private pipes that bring water straight into their homes and gardens. They build elaborate fountains and pools, showing off their status. The poor, meanwhile, wait in line at public fountains, sometimes for hours. When the water runs low, it's the poor who suffer first. And then, there are the moments of crisis. Imagine the panic when a section of aqueduct collapses. Suddenly, the fountains run dry. The baths close. People rush to the Tiber, desperate for water, even though they know it's dirty. Rumors spread. Was it an accident or sabotage? The city holds its breath, waiting for the engineers to fix the problem. Through it all, the aqueducts become more than just stone and water. They're a symbol of Rome's power, its ingenuity, and its promise to care for its people. When the water flows, the city thrives. When it stops, everyone feels the loss. Let's walk through a day in the life of a Roman family. Early in the morning, the city is already buzzing. At the public fountain, women gather to fill their clay jars. Children play nearby, splashing each other and laughing. The baker arrives, carrying buckets of water back to his shop. He knows that without this water, his bread will be dry and hard. The baths. The attendants are busy. They fill the pools, heat the water, and prepare for the crowds. For many Romans, the baths are more than just a place to get clean. They're the center of social life. People come to relax, gossip, and do business. The water is warm, the air is steamy, and for a few hours, everyone forgets their troubles, but not everyone is so lucky. In the poorer neighborhoods, the lines at the fountains are long. Sometimes, the water runs out before everyone gets their share. Tempers flare, and arguments break out. The city officials try to keep order, but it's not always easy. And then, there are the emergencies. When a section of aqueduct is damaged by an earthquake, a landslide, or even sabotage, the whole city feels it. The baths close. The fountains dry up. People panic, not knowing when the water will return. The engineers work day and night, racing against time to make repairs. When the water finally flows again, there's a sense of relief, even celebration. For the people of Rome, the aqueducts are more than just a convenience. They're a lifeline, a promise that, no matter what happens, the city will endure. As the centuries pass, the Roman Empire begins to weaken. The city is attacked, the government falters, and the money for repairs dries up. The aqueducts, once the pride of Rome, start to fall into disrepair. Some are damaged by invaders, who know that cutting off the water is the quickest way to bring a city to its knees. Others simply crumble, their stones stolen for new buildings. For the people of Rome, the loss is devastating. The baths close, the fountains dry up, and disease spreads. The city, once the greatest in the world, shrinks and fades. The aqueducts, now silent and empty, become a symbol of lost glory, but the story doesn't end there. Centuries later, explorers and archaeologists rediscover the aqueducts. They marvel at the engineering, the precision, the sheer ambition of these ancient builders. Some aqueducts are restored, their arches standing tall once more. Others are studied, their secrets revealed to a new generation, and the lessons of the aqueducts live on. Modern engineers study their design, learning how to move water across great distances. Cities around the world build their own aqueducts, inspired by the Romans. The idea that water is a public good, a right, not a privilege, takes root, shaping the world we live in today. The Roman aqueducts are more than just ancient ruins. They're a testament to human ingenuity, determination, and the power of community. They remind us that, when people work together, there's almost nothing they can't achieve. But they also warn us. The fall of the aqueducts shows how quickly progress can be lost when we take it for granted. It's a reminder that the things we depend on, clean water, public services, even the very fabric of our cities, must be cared for and protected. Today, as we face our own challenges, climate change, growing cities, and the need for clean water, the story of the Roman aqueducts feels more relevant than ever. It's a call to action, a reminder that the solutions to our biggest problems often start with a single, simple idea, that everyone deserves access to the basics of life. Next time you turn on the tap, take a moment to remember the Romans, their struggles, their triumphs, and the water that still flows across the centuries to us. Thanks for joining us on this journey through history. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more fascinating tales from the past. Until next time, stay curious.